Hello and welcome to another episode of Come Back Stronger, where we bring you stories of people who have faced adversity, have overcome their challenges, and have come back stronger.
That's right.
And so I am here with my law partner Dana Brooks, and today we are going to introduce you to Theresa Flores, who was the victim of human trafficking while she was in high school. But she has taken the pain that she suffered and the challenge that she suffered there, and she's turned it into a purpose.
Yes, she has. And her story is so compelling. And as she's about my age, and I can identify with her so much of what happened to her. She wasn't brought into human trafficking the way we think. Someone being smuggled, or someone who's already living on the margins, maybe a runaway, maybe LGBTQ plus youth, somebody having trouble fitting in. She looked and acted like a normal person. But she got into it, oddly enough, because of her parents. Her father got moved around a lot. And so she was always a new person in town, new person in the school, and that makes kids vulnerable. It's one of those ACE events, those adverse childhood incidents or events where you have to switch schools a lot and you're always having to make new friends, always trying to, and that makes you vulnerable, and it makes you a target for the wrong kind of people to come at you.
Absolutely. We've seen this before with other people that we've had on the show, where ultimately they, what happened with this young woman was she fell in love, or she thought she was in love. She had a crush on a young man that turned out to be basically a human trafficker.
A bad actor. And this is somebody who was in school with her. And see, this happened to me. This was like an 80s type of thing too. And there'd be these cool guys, and you want their attention, and you want to be, in with the cool crowd or whatever. Those people are somewhat sophisticated for their age. They're used to having what they want and getting what they want. And what they put this girl through initially was so bad, and then to see them use that against her, they drugged and raped her, and then they made her kind of earn her way out of it by doing this with more and more of their people and their friends, and it was just so awful, and it was happening right under the nose of all kind of people in this very affluent area of Detroit. So when we come back, we'll see that this can happen. It can happen right under your nose, and you can do something about it too, and she helps us learn how.
We'll be right back.
She contacted me almost in a fugue. She couldn't believe that it happened. And something told her, this is not right.
She had lost her daughter.
This is not right. My little girl should be here, and I'm going to do something about it. She contacted me, and I went to see her, I think that day. And we sat at her dining room table, and she showed me the program from the funeral. And I met her sons and saw her gravesite, and I just told her, I don't know what happened, but I'm going to find out, and we're going to do something about it. And she and I bonded right then, and she's been in my life ever since. And seeing how she has used something that is an unimaginable loss and found some way to live a better life and make a better life for her son. There's nothing better.
Welcome back to Come Back Stronger, where we are introducing you to Theresa Flores, the victim of human trafficking, who has turned the pain that she suffered into a purpose. She's being interviewed right now by our law partner, Carrie Roan. Carrie, take it away.
Hi, Theresa Flores. Thank you so much for joining our show, Come Back Stronger. I'm really looking forward to this interview. What I read about you before meeting you was that you are a survivor of human trafficking as a child. You were sold essentially as a child when you were a teenager, and went through that process. And now your Come Back Stronger story is everything you're doing legally to prevent human trafficking, to get the message about human trafficking out, and to protect children from getting involved in that type of sex slavery and human trafficking situation.
Right.
Yeah. Let's start by, if you don't mind, sharing with us what happened to you when you were a teenager in Detroit. What was your life like before you got sold into slavery, and how did that all happen?
Yeah. Well, I, consider myself having grown up in a normal family, if there is such a thing. with a mom and dad and 3 younger brothers. I didn't, people have certain ideas of what they think a trafficking victim looks like. And I don't think that I fit that mold. And that's because there is really no mold. It can happen to anybody. But just had a normal life. Though we moved around a lot. We moved every 2 years because of my dad's job. So that's the one thing that made me more vulnerable than any other kid, is because I was always the new kid, always trying to fit in, always, just kind of a fish out of water. Yeah. So that's what made me a little different. We moved the middle of my 9th grade, so middle of my freshman year, to a new school again. And I would say that I was lonely. My dad traveled a lot for work, and my mom was really busy with her little, endeavors. And so I think that I had probably low self-esteem too, trying to always fit in and just be loved. And somebody saw that in high school, somebody I went to high school with, an older guy. He and some guys that he were family with and friends with in sort of like an upper class gang, I would say, developed a plan. And that plan involved using me to earn them lots of money.
How old were you at the time?
15.
Theresa, what year was that?
That was 1980. Let me think, 80 to 82. Yeah.
And so, then and through the 90s and all the way up through now, I think the teenagers face the same challenges, right? You want to fit in, you want to belong, you want to be liked, you want to be loved, you want to be accepted. And that was particularly hard for you because you were always having to set up yourself with a new group of friends, try to get approval from a new set of people in a new town and a new school, which did make you vulnerable. And I think I've interviewed quite a number of people who have been victims of human trafficking, and they all say the same thing, which is they had a vulnerability which made them ripe for exploitation. And the vulnerability was wanting to be loved.
Exactly. And I think there's one other piece to that we probably all have as well, is that we didn't have a strong support system. So typically, if you have a teenage kid and they want to be loved, right? If they have a strong family and system around them, then that's not going to, you're not going to get trafficked. You're not as vulnerable. Mm-hmm. But for those of us who didn't have strong, nobody knew who Theresa was. Nobody knew me for years and stuff. So I didn't have any fallback of somebody really to protect me.
Yeah. So how did it happen? So you became friends with these guys. I'm sure you looked up to them. They were older. They were probably good looking, wealthy guys, and you wanted their approval. So how did it morph from being their friends or maybe dating one of them into kind of getting kidnapped or sold into sex slavery?
Yeah. Like you said, handsome, wealthy, very suave, very convincing. And was one of the guys that I kind of developed a crush on because they had planned it this way. And he just offered me a ride home from school one day. It was as simple as that. I thought this was great, and he didn't take me home. He took me to his house and ended up drugging and raping me. And so that was devastating in itself, right? Because I was a virgin and I had never planned on, doing that with him.
Right. And, he was a teenager too, right?
Right. Yeah. A couple years older than me, but also a teenager.
But what a predator. And here you thought that the cute boy that I likes me back and he's going to give me a ride home and maybe he'll ask me for my phone number.
Exactly. Yeah. I was very naive.
So what did you do after this other teenager? I mean, how sophisticated for this teenage plan to come about? What did you do after he drugged and raped you?
Went home and made a bad decision that I wasn't going to tell my mom and dad. Back then there wasn't the awareness of date rape and things like that there are today.
Yeah.
I thought that, my mom would be angry because I wasn't allowed to date at that time. I thought she'd be mad that I went with this guy. I thought they'd be disappointed in me because my family really wanted me to be a virgin whenever I got married. And so I felt a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And it was my fault. So I just kept quiet.
But now I assume you counsel people to always speak up and let somebody know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk to high school students and stuff, I let them know these are the things that I messed up on and that I should have, looking back, have done differently.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that they can learn from, basically my mistake, which led to, being trafficked.
So what happened after that? After you decided not to tell your parents?
Yeah, it was a couple days later. I went to school again and saw him. And he said, I need to speak with you in private. It's urgent. And, I didn't want to even see him. But he was like, this is not up for debates. This is not an option. You need to talk to me. And he showed me an envelope that were full of photos of what happened. And they looked nothing like what truly had happened. And he said, my older cousins, they were there taking these photos, and we have a plan, and that is that you're going to earn these back, or else we'll share them with your father, with his boss at work, with
God.
Everybody at school. So for me, it was a situation where it was blackmail and manipulation to do what they wanted.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk just a little bit more about what happened to you during the human trafficking situation, how you got out of it, and then what you're doing now to prevent other girls and boys from getting involved in it.
Oh my gosh.
What about that? You can see
She
that
goes from, in no time flat, from a virgin, an innocent virgin, to now
crush. She
being
thought somebody
with a
was welcoming
crush, to now a sex, being a sex slave.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and what a sophisticated operation this is. Like Carrie Roan said, boys don't come out of the box like this. They learn this behavior. They have seen men treat women in a way that made them think this was okay. No child, no boy in high school just comes up with this. This comes from the environment you raise them in. It comes from a certain privilege. It comes from looking at certain people as if they're not worthy. This girl was looked at as a throwaway girl. She wasn't looked at as a full human. She was somebody to subjugate, somebody to get over on, somebody to have your way with and make some money off of. She wasn't looked at as a real person, and these boys were not trained to do that. I mean, somebody taught them that this is okay to treat another human being this way, and you got to look up whenever you see that. Look at the people they're surrounded by. These were affluent people.
They're affluent.
They thought they were untouchable.
That's crazy. Yes.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder the environment that they were brought up in. We always think these are street
You
people,
assume.
street hustlers.
Yeah, you make
these are
assumptions.
No. The fish rots from the head, and you've got to find out where it's coming from to stop it. So I hope every parent is out there listening to this, and I hope you show this to some of your girls and some of your children, so they know to come to you.
I've got a 14-year-old right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have her watch this because I want her to see what's possible out there so that she can be on guard.
Yeah, and we need to remove the shame. Shame is a powerful thing, man. It's what keeps people able to control you. And if we can remove that and remove some of all these things that allow people to control and manipulate our most vulnerable among us, our children, then we can give them their power back. So I just can't wait to come back and see the second part of this.
Yeah, so we're going to go to a break right now, but when we come back, we're going to hear the second part where Theresa Flores comes back stronger.
Yes, she does.
And you know what the insurance company offered him? $5,000.
Really?
He's completely blind, and they offer him $5,000. Ask him to sign a release.
To a lot of people, especially when they're hurting and when they're down and when they're vulnerable, $5,000 is a life-changing amount of money. Yeah. And they're not looking at the value of what has been lost. They're not looking at what it would take to make that person whole, which is our job. Yeah. That's our job. Their job isn't. Their job is to save the insurance company money. Right. And they look at this person and they go, I bet $5,000 would get your full attention. Right. And they come in and they dangle it with a settlement release, and then once you sign it, you're done. You can't come back to us and ask us to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That can't go away.
My client didn't accept the $5,000. We took him all the way to trial. We got a $5 million verdict.
Welcome back to Come Back Stronger, where we are hearing the comeback story of Theresa Flores. She just shared with us how she fell into human trafficking. She was victimized by a high school kid while she was in high school, and she was blackmailed into becoming a sex slave for him and his buddies. And it was just a horrible story. But now she's going to tell the second part of her story, which fortunately has a happy ending, but this is such a tragic story. I can't wait for you to hear the second part. Thanks.
Theresa, tell me a little bit about how much time you spent in this situation and how you wound up getting out of it. And what did it involve? What did it entail?
So I was in it for like a year and a half, 2 years. Timelines are really hard knowing, thinking back. And they would call. I had a phone in my room, and they would call there like around midnight, a couple nights a week, and say, you need to appear immediately. And so I would sneak outside and go across the street and meet a car, and they would drive me to beautiful big homes all around the Detroit area, very, very rich homes, where they would take me to a basement area and have men come over and over again for several hours. And then they would take me back home, and I would sneak back inside and go to bed for a few hours and get up for school the next day. My parents had no idea that I was sneaking out. They had no idea, obviously, that something like this was happening to me. If they would have woken up in the middle of the night and checked my room, they would have seen I was gone, but nobody, none of my friends knew, nobody at school knew. Yet though there were signs, right? Like I was not wanting to go to school. I was sick all the time and depressed, and my grades dropped. So there were signs, but nobody had any idea like something like that was happening.
Right. And I think a lot of it is because back then, and even really until recently, when you talk about human trafficking or sex slavery, you think it's not here, it's in Thailand, or it's people that we don't know, or it's, they're bringing truckloads of people across the border and using them as sex slaves, and or it's like the Jeffrey Epstein thing. It's not in our backyards. But I think now, through so much awareness with human trafficking, like with your story and other people's stories, we're discovering and we're becoming familiar that it is in our backyards. And it is very simple and easy to do, and it ruins people's lives all around us.
Yeah. So if you would have said to me, when I was 16, hey, are you being trafficked? I would have been like, I don't even know what that is. Like, you're crazy. Right. No. So if you would have said, are some people making you do something you don't want to do? Then I would have said yes.
So, Theresa, what are you doing now with respect to preventing human trafficking and counseling people and changing laws and policy?
Well, when I turned 40, I went to a conference on human trafficking. And as a social worker, I thought this is probably something that I should know about, and had no idea that would lead to where I am today. It opened my eyes up to give me that word of what had happened to me. Because I didn't know what it was called. And as soon as I learned about trafficking and made that connection, like, oh my gosh, that's my story, I knew that I just needed to find my voice and tell as many people as possible about what's going on. And it's even worse now than it was when I was a kid, with the internet and all of that. So I sought out a senator and a representative in Ohio and Michigan, kind of where I work a lot, and said, if you need my voice, to help change laws, then I will do that. Mm-hmm. There was no law against trafficking somebody in Ohio or Michigan. It was a federal law, but not a state law. And so it took 5 years and lots of testimony to be able to convince senators and representatives that we should have a law against human trafficking in the states, which was just, crazy. And I had a senator from Michigan approach me and say, what is it that needs to be done from your perspective as a survivor? What can we do better. And so we met and came up with a bunch of ideas. And one of them, she decided she wanted to name after me. And that was the Theresa Flores law that got passed in Michigan. And I believe it's the only law in the United States that removes permanently the statute of limitation for a child being trafficked. So this law now lets a child who's been trafficked, so anybody under the age of 18 who's trafficked, can indefinitely, no matter how old they are, take back their traffickers to court when they're ready.
So I have one last question for you before we run out of time. How did you get out of your human trafficking situation? And what would you tell somebody who's watching this interview if they are relating to it, saying, I'm in this situation? What would you tell them on how to get out of their situation?
Yeah. If you're being victimized by this, if you're being threatened by this right now, call the hotline number. It is 1-888-3737-888. And they can get you help immediately. You can call 911. Most police officers have been trained in this as well. But definitely, nobody deserves to be treated like this. And there is help out there. Guarantee you there's help out there. So what else? How did I get out of it? I have a book called The Slave Across the Street, and you can read the book to find out how I got out of it. So
where can we find the book? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very, very miraculous way. And I will tell you, most don't get out of this.
Yeah.
Many die in suicide or murder. So it's not common to really get out of it. My father got transferred again, and we ended up moving many, many miles away, and I was able to escape without anybody knowing. And that's not typical. That's very rare that it ends that way. So I'm very, very lucky.
Interesting how almost the cause of your trafficking became the salvation from your trafficking, all those moves.
Yeah, it's, they still call it turning lemons into lemonade, right? But it became a purpose. Like it's my purpose to do this and to help others get out of it or to heal, to, be restored.
Well, Theresa, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sorry that it's under these circumstances, but I appreciate you wanting to share your story, and I hope it reaches so many people and hopefully can get the message to some children or families that are suffering from victimization.
Thank you for helping put my voice to me too by honoring that, and because more people need to hear about this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time.
Wow, one reason why I think this story is so important is because it shows how somebody who has gone through a challenge and suffered pain can turn that pain into a purpose and use that pain as the fire in their belly to make this world a better place, to take action. And that's exactly what Theresa Flores has done. She's taken action to make the world a better place. She's actually changed the law.
Yeah. I love that about her, because so many times, like you say, this story doesn't end like this. It ends where someone just doesn't want to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And either they give themselves over to it and end up drug addicted, dying from addiction or murder, or they take their own lives because they don't see a way out. She did have so many things going for her. She had that nuclear family and that sort of thing, although she couldn't avail herself of the support that we typically associate with having an intact family, which is good communication and support and that sort of thing. Sometimes when you come from these great families, the worst thing you want to do is let them down and disappoint them, and it keeps our children from telling us things that are going on with them, and it keeps us from inquiring because everything looks so good. Everything looks great on the surface. These grades are looking good. They're in all the extracurricular activities. My kids are shining, and I'm so proud of them. And you think that can't possibly be anything wrong going on with them. But when we come back from the break, I do want to talk about some leadership in this area, and especially with men, and how we can make some changes that way.
Okay, well, we're going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that.
I think people don't understand how harmful it can be to wait. Evidence and people are in the wind. If you need a video of something, that could get recorded over within sometimes 24 hours. So it's not, I ran to a lawyer right away. No, I stood up for myself and preserved evidence and preserved my rights.
I had a case where one of my clients got her finger stuck in a door because the door closer had rusted, and the company had done a terrible job of maintaining it. But she came to us within days of having her finger amputated. And it was so important that she did that because I was able to get an expert to fly down to that condominium to inspect the door closer. I mean, we had evidence within 2 weeks, and we were able to get a wonderful settlement for her, but we wouldn't have been able to if she hadn't have called us and
That would have been
contacted
an
us.
entirely different case even 2 or 3 months later.
Hello and welcome back to Come Back Stronger, where we just heard the fascinating story of Theresa Flores, who was the victim of human trafficking in high school. It was just fascinating how she was lured into becoming a sex slave, and then she was fortunate to overcome it, and now she has used that pain and suffering as a fire in her belly to actually make changes to this world. She's actually made a change to the law, so she's a very impressive person. Dana, what did you think mostly? What was the big takeaway for you from her story?
I loved that she knew that she had to do something, and that she didn't just put it behind her, because that's the other thing people do when they don't give over to this. Sometimes they go, okay, I survived it. Just put this behind me. I'm going to pretend it didn't happen and go out and live this great life. Well, that may be good for you, but then you're probably thinking, well, what about the other people that I'm not helping? I liked that she wouldn't leave it in the past, and I like that it's like you said, a fire in her belly, the passion moves her. I was not at all surprised to learn she's a social worker. I probably could have predicted that. But I want to talk about men, okay? Because we talk about strength and women empowerment, and I love that. I'm all about it. But I met a man recently. I heard him speak. His name's Troy Vincent. He's the executive vice president of football operations for the NFL. And he was here in our town, and he was also talking about his friendship with Charlie Ward, who's a very beloved person in our world up here in North Florida.
My dog's named Charlie Ward.
And Bowden, his brother Bowden. But one of the things they talked about was how important it is for men to be leaders to other men. And they came up in the NFL. They're big dogs. They got a lot of attention. They could have gone into these bad ways, and they both looked for each other to support each other and to make sure they made good choices. And they challenge other men to not abide bad behavior in other men. And so in the NFL, they will call each other out. They'll go, whenever we see somebody beating a girlfriend or being bad to a wife or whatever, we don't abide that. We don't just look the other way. We call out these men. And that's what it means to be a real man, is to challenge other men to be real men, because women can't do this by ourselves. We don't get into this by ourselves. We can't get out. We need everybody working together. And that means men looking out and making sure other men do the right thing.
I wholeheartedly agree. We're talking, in this case, we're talking about a group of young men that were obviously, they didn't have leadership in their lives.
No.
And then if any of them had any decent leadership in their lives, then they would have fought against the others who were making these horrible choices and damaging Theresa Flores forever. So absolutely 100% great point. I'll tell you what, we have these comeback stories, and this is one of the most compelling of them. But thank you so much for joining us. And we are here every week giving you more and more of these comeback stories to inspire you and to motivate you. And we look forward to seeing you the next time. Just because you have a pre-existing injury does not mean that you are not entitled to compensation for the injury being aggravated or exacerbated by somebody else's carelessness.
I talk to new clients all the time, and they're concerned that because they had a prior neck injury or back injury, that they can't bring a claim now that they've been made worse.
Right, absolutely not.
And so I'm so glad that they call so we can explain to them that in Florida, no, we're able to get you compensation for any way that your body has changed in a negative way because of this accident.
I've also had clients who've said, well, I think I'm partially at fault here. Do I have a case? In Florida, you can be partially at fault. You can be 90% at fault, but you still have a